We're back here at Camp Randall Stadium for another year of BadgerBeat. I'm Adam Mertz from Wisconsin State Journal, joined by Tom Oates and Tom Mulhern. Got the season opener coming up Saturday against Northern Iowa here at 2:30. First topic we want to talk about is Danny O'Brien, fresh starter coming in. Oatesy, on the heels of Russell Wilson getting named starter for the Seahawks, O'Brien also coming as a transfer. What are the expectations for this guy? There's too many people are trying to tie them together, it seems like.
Well, there's a lot of natural tie-ins, the way they transferred here, where they came from, the experience they've had. There's certainly a lot of natural tie-ins, but the fact is they're different players, and Russell Wilson was special. We've seen with his rapid ascension through the ranks with the Seahawks how special he really was, and consequently, you know, I think people are going to have high expectations for O'Brien. I think he can match some reasonable expectations. He's certainly he doesn't have to be Russell Wilson though, and anybody that thinks that is fooling themselves. If he was Scott Tolzien, I think everybody'd be happy, because you know that's what you do at Wisconsin is you manage and run the offense. Wilson added some special things. I don't think you're going to see those this year, but I do think you're going to see a veteran guy who can manage the offense and get Wisconsin moving up and down the field.
Had kind of limited exposure to him during training camp, but from what you've seen, can you remark on anything? Mobility has come up a lot in terms of he offers more than you might think. And also the big topic is his completion percentage, which was right around 56, as I remember, at Maryland.
Yeah, it was about 57, I think, in 2 years as a starter at Maryland. That really needs to be better. I think that jumps out. That's one of the major things I'm going to be looking at. And in this offense, I think they need him to be around the mid-60s. And he kept the interceptions down to a minimum in camp, and that was obviously a good sign. He does move pretty well on his feet, and I think if you go back to his high school tape, he moved around a little bit, but we'll see. You know, as Oatsy said, following Russell Wilson, he's not going to make plays on the run like Wilson did. But if he can just avoid trouble in the pocket and keep plays alive, I think that'll be a huge thing to watch as well.
Of course, it's nice to have the advantage of having Monte Ball in your backfield. You wrote about him for a special preseason magazine that's coming out Friday in the State Journal. This year, the exposure that he's gotten already preseason, the expectation level is pretty high. Talk a little bit about what you expect to see out of Monte Ball this year that's different from last year.
Well, I think one of the best things Monte has going for him is the running backs coach Thomas Hammock, who kind of embraces the role of kind of humbler, and that's something he can find always ways for Ball to improve, and I think that's important. And you know, talking to Ball at the end of camp, just ask him, "Are you ready?" Because he had a limited camp. He wasn't tackled. He missed the first week. He was in a green jersey for a week after that, and he said there's no way Thomas Hammock wouldn't have him ready for the beginning of the season. And so I think we're going to see an improved Monte Ball from last year. I think he's an all-around back, which I touched on in our special section. I think his ability to run with power, run with speed, he never fumbles. He catches the ball and he pass protects, so I don't know what more you want out of your tailback.
Last year, he got the bulk of the carries, and James White kind of fell to an afterthought status in a lot of games. What do you expect shaking out of that position this year in terms of distribution? Well,
they went with the hot hand last year, and it was really hard to blame them given the production they got out of Monte Ball. But I think this year, after they've had an off season to reflect on it, maybe they've figured out probably ways to get the other guys the ball more. I think we saw that in the spring when they started experimenting with James White as a receiver, split outs, slots, or something like that. I think they're going to find ways to get more touches for all of them. I mean, maybe not Ball. They were probably not going to get him more touches, but more touches for the other guys without running the ball all the time. So that was certainly encouraging. But I think both those guys are really capable, and there's not going to be that much of a drop-off.
Monte also the Badgers' leading returning passer. Think about that. How about the hot spots? We want to go through a little bit of the roster. A quick touch on the hot spots, the question marks on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, my question is how they're going to replace Nick Toon. Nick Toon made a lot of big catches last year. Jared Aberderis made some big catches. Jeff Duckworth made some big catches. But Nick Toon made a lot of big catches last year, and he was the kind of big physical receiver that you need in the Big Ten. Replacing him, we saw there was, through what we saw of camp, there was a cast of thousands at the beginning. It's gotten narrowed down to redshirt freshman Jordan Frederick has won the starting spot. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of production they can get out of that second wide receiver spot, because if there's a quote-unquote barren area of the team, it might be wide receiver, at least in terms of proven players.
Molly, how about what's your target area on offense?
I'll go to the offensive line, and there's two issues in the offensive line: right guard and depth. I think right guard is going to be okay. They've still got a couple of guys, Kyle Costigan and Zach Mathias, battling for that job this week, and Dallas Llewellyn is back in the fray, and I think he's really going to bolster the depth as well. But I think it's an issue with tackle depth right now, and if they get an injury at tackle, I think they're going to be hurt. And I think their other four spots are very solid. I think it's going to be a typical Wisconsin offensive line in many aspects, but they can't have many injuries this year.
How about the defensive side of the ball?
Well, with the recent news, Peniel Jean out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken foot. Very valuable nickelback, and if you know anything about the way football is going, nickelbacks play a lot on third down, and especially against spread teams. So that's a huge thing, and he was really a solid guy as a nickelback, and a really sure tackler as well, which I think was kind of overlooked at times. So Darius Hillary is a guy they like, especially on the mental aspect. So smart that they moved him from corner to free safety, thinking that he would be a really good safety candidate. Now he's going back to corner, but he's going to have to play right away as a redshirt freshman in a really valuable position. So I think that hurts some of their depth, and I think they're lacking some depth at safety as well.
Kind of deja vu with Devin Smith's injury from last year, kind of weakening depth early on. The good news is, I guess you get him back earlier. Peniel Jean will be back earlier and be able to contribute still, theoretically, through the course of the season. How about for you, OT?
Well, I think if you look at the defense, there's some areas along the D-line that have to prove themselves. Number one is the tackle position. I think Bo Allen and Ethan Hemer are two outstanding tackles. They're experienced, they're big, they've done some things. I think Allen has some tremendous upside. But after that, it's very unproven and thin behind that position. Losing Jordan Cahout, was a real blow, I think, to the program. He was a third experienced guy. Some other guys are going to have to step up there. And secondly, I think they need some pass rush out of their one or two of their defensive ends. They have a cast of thousands out there, and a couple of them, David Gilbert, Brendan Kelly, have to step up and become legitimate pass rushers that threaten the quarterback more than every 15th play or something. They have to do it consistently.
I mean, you're touching on the lack of depth there. That's a big thing that they've done in recent years that's given them success, is rotate guys through. Do you see that diminishing and really leaning on those horses?
Well, especially inside. I think, Charlie Partridge has obviously developed that game plan of rotating his linemen, inside and his outside linemen, and it's worked really well, I think, keeping players fresh and keeping a supply of experienced players. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure they can do it inside unless a Warren Herring or someone else steps up.
Thanks for joining us this week. We'll have full coverage on madison.com and in the State Journal leading up to Saturday's game.